Hey everybody, I'm Bob Bakert with Jazz Guitar Today, and we're here with I didn't even know where to go. I'm always at a loss with guys like you that have created something out of nothing. Brad Wendkos of TrueFire. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the TrueFire, the one and only. Uh, Amazing resource for learning anything and everything you ever wanted to know about guitar from the very best players in the world, period, bar none. That's pretty amazing, actually. It's pretty amazing, Brian. So, so how did I mean, I don't want to ask too much history questions because I kind of want to know a few other things, but tell us just briefly how you got started in all of this.
Oh boy. Um, well, you know, the seed of this idea really started way back with the first couple of issues of Guitar Player magazine. I was living in New York, playing guitar, learning guitar, and by the way, there's always something new to learn. It never ends.
Oh, I
Uh,
know.
we have 55,000 videos, and I think we're just scratching the surface. Anyway, uh, Guitar Player magazine, which I would read cover to cover when it would come in, used to have print lessons. And I remember I loved the lessons from Howard Roberts. This is way back, man. You weren't even born yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm older than you,
You were
Brad.
just a sparkle in your
I,
daddy's
I, I'm
eyes.
I'm
All right.
older. I'm older than you, and I had all those magazines.
So if you remember, Sonic Shapes was the one that really captivated me. All these symmetrical shapes. And while, they would give you the diagram, how do you make music with them? So I
Right.
remember thinking, because at that time, you could also, some magazines had these little plastic mini records. Do you remember those little vinyl
Of
things?
course. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, God, it would be so cool to have one of those so you could hear how a lesson was supposed to sound when played properly.
Right.
Guitar players, for the most part, they don't read music, right? So anyway, that's the seed of it, and that goes way back. But I had my second business, I guess, was an interactive media company.
Hmm.
Um, and basically, we started with IVR, which is interactive voice response, right?
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
Your microphone is picking up all that extraneous conversation.
Outside.
Yeah,
Hold
and
on.
it's polluting the audio track.
All right. Sorry, we're kind of in an open office
Yeah, no,
environment.
I understand.
So we used interactive technology, which really it started with the telephone, where you push the buttons on your keypad. And we thought, hey, you could record stuff and a company can use it, marketing, loyalty, incentive, what have you. And we wound up, you know, running that business for 17 years, doing marketing programs, loyalty programs, promotions for, let's see, at least 300 Fortune 500 brands. Did that for 17 years. Um, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, my God, this would be great for music education. Went to all the guitar publications, sold them on the idea. And you may have remembered Notes on Call, where you would go to a lesson in a magazine. There'd be a little 3-digit code number and an 800 number, and you could call it up on your phone and hear the lesson being presented in an audio form by the artist. It was an awkward, like, what do you do? Practice like this. But we did tens of millions of phone calls, which kind of proved, the model. Anyway, ultimately, audio became the internet. Then we were streaming. Then we did video. But it all started on 23rd Street, West Side, just after reading a Howard Roberts article in New York City. That's really the start.
That Howard. Well, man, I got to tell you. So I'm here on your website,
Yep.
and you've got a couple of names on here. You know, educators. Now you've got, I don't know, some like 300 contributors in that ballpark. But the names that pop up are Joe Bonamassa. You can take lessons from Joe. Greg Koch, Tommy Emmanuel, Robin Ford, Matt Schofield, Josh Smith, Tim Pierce, Jeff McErlane, Corey Congilo. Who's the only one I don't know? I hate to admit that. Ariel Posen, Kirk Fletcher.
Corey Congilio, and he's amazing. Go ahead.
I'm sure he is, or he wouldn't be on your list. Larry Carlton, Steve Vai, Pat Martino, Andy Wood, and we're not even talking about guys like Frank Vignola and Ted Ludwig, and on and on and on and on and on and on. Tim Lurch and
Fox.
Pardon me. Yeah, I mean,
Cheryl Bailey. I mean,
gotta,
what's amazing is right from the beginning, we felt it was really, really important. No one was doing jazz instruction at that time, you know?
Right. Well, that's kind of where I want to go. Yeah. So you're.
So, you know, I remember our first few, it was like, you know, I mean, a lot of companies think about things commercially, right? What are you going to sell more of? You know, jazz lessons or whatever the current trend is in blues or rock or pop or singer-songwriter.
Right.
But, I had studied jazz when I was coming up. My father was a jazz player. And, you know, I just felt it was really important to archive and preserve lessons from today's jazz artists. You know, I don't think jazz is ever going, you know, jazz is not going away. It'll be 100 years from now, 200 years from now. And so we have a massive jazz library, just massive. And we'll, you know, we're going to keep going. Some of the names you've mentioned are, you know, you've got Cheryl Bailey. She's head of the guitar. I think she's assistant chair at Berkeley.
Yeah, we've interviewed Cheryl.
Frank Vignola, of course.
Of course.
Mimi Fox is
we've interviewed Mimi.
Couple of young cats. Ted Ludwig will blow your mind.
Ted's a contributor to us. Tim Lurch.
Sean McGowan, who's a professor out of Colorado.
Sean's been in the magazine many times.
I know I'm forgetting some folks, but
there's a ton of them. I mean, there's just a ton of them, and I guess that's part of the conversation. Is well, let me just make something clear about our magazine. We don't just cater to, you know, the bebop players and old school. So what we're all about is we're trying to expand jazz language into blues, expand it into rock, expand it into, you know, helping with the fusion thing. You know, Al Di Meola's on the cover right now, who's playing as much flamenco as he's playing anything.
That's right.
So, you know, we've had Steve Vai on the cover, you know, Robin Ford, of course, Eric Johnson. And so the audience that we're after is we're trying to take all those people that are intimidated by the jazz language, don't know how to contextualize it. Like you made a great point earlier. One of the first things you said is they'd show you this stuff, but there was no context. How do I fit that into my music? And the beauty of what you guys are doing is that you're showing people via your platform, you know, how to play and how to make music with this language and what this language does. So the expansion of the jazz language into other idioms, I mean, nobody does it better than you, Brad. I mean,
well, thank you. That's very flattering. And, you know, it's interesting that you say what you said, because I've noticed two things. You know, we've been doing this for 23 years now. So there's definitely perspective that we draw on. And man, so many, you know, you learn from your mistakes, right? And you have preconceived notions that ultimately you realize, man, was I off base? So I remember when I was learning jazz, you know, I thought what a lot of people who are starting to learn jazz thought, man, you got to know a million chords. It's complicated. It's rocket science. It's this and it's that. Now, certainly you can go down that rabbit hole. John Stoll Okay. Have you ever met John Stoll? I mean, for
Of
me,
course I've met John. John's a
he's one of
contributor.
the most brilliant, jazz guitarists and theorists on the planet, right?
Hmm.
But the other thing that I've noticed is lately it's hard, when I was coming up, and you go to the record store, you had a bin, jazz, blues, rock, everything fit in the pigeonholes, right?
Right.
Today, the players that are coming in, including these jazz players, are bringing in, not only the jazz players, bringing in a rock influence or a fusion influence, even a country influence, twang things. I'm trying to think of the cat out of New York, that country fried licks course we did with them. Anyway, but all of the other players, the blues players, the rock players, the country players, they're all infusing their music with jazz phrasing or jazz chords. It's hard to, if I had a record store, I wouldn't know where to put the music.
Well,
It's all,
so there I am because I play. This is the guitar. I play. And so there I am backstage at a show I'm doing at in Nashville, and Brent Mason's on the bill,
yeah,
and and a whole lot of other amazing country guys from Nashville, quote unquote country guys from Nashville, and I'm in the green room, and every one of them was warming up playing bebop licks.
yeah,
Every one of them, and playing them well, by the way.
yeah.
And and you can't talk to any of those guys. There's nobody in Nashville at the highest level. They just can't play the, excuse my expression, or don't excuse it. They can't play the shit out of bebop.
That's right.
I mean, those guys, they all can play anything they choose to play. They make a living playing what they play.
Well, you know what I've heard, man? Bill Evans, the sax player,
Yeah.
he's come in and done a couple of things with us. And, we would take so many guitar players, cop licks from saxophone players, right?
Right.
And he did, his first course with us was called The Language of Improvisation.
Right.
And the point that he made is, if you want to learn how to improvise, you learn bebop, okay?
Mhm.
Everything stems from bebop.
Right.
And that's probably why all those guys are playing those bebop lines. And Cheryl Bailey is all about bebop, of course. Her whole series here is, the Bebop Dojo, right? But if you think about it, and she shows this in several of her courses, these bebop lines, all you have to do is twist them a little bit and they work in any genre, genre,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is so hard to classify music today. It's so hard, and it makes it tough on us because, when we launch a new course, you have to come up with the genres and you have to do the tagging, and
Right.
and we have one tag called multi-genre, right? In fact, this morning we were going over the marketing for Kenny Lee Lewis course called Rhythm Renaissance. Right. Kenny Lee Lewis was the bass player and guitar player with Steve Miller Band, right? And I would credit him more than anybody else. All those great grooves that came out of Steve Miller Band. This guy Kenny was unbelievable. His course covers everything from funk and blues to country and folk, and it's just music today.
Yeah.
Music.
Well, you got, Robin Ford is a great example. Robin got famous playing in jazz bands, really. I mean, the Yellow Jackets and Miles. I mean, obviously he played with Joni Mitchell and, all that kind of stuff. But Robin's the first one who's been in the magazine a lot, and he's got a lot of stuff going on with you. Robin's the first one to say, I'm really not a jazz player. I'm a blues player. That's what I am. But
yeah, it's crazy because, he studied jazz. We did this documentary with Robin recently called Play with Fire, Ground Path Fruition, right?
Right.
Which is a Buddhist way of describing, the path and cycles of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was grounded in jazz, and blues.
Right.
And then in the path, he wound up playing with the Yellow Jackets, like you said, Miles Davis. And the fruition, which is what we all enjoy, is this, he pioneered this incredible progressive modern blues sound, right?
Right.
Larry Carlton, similarly, played a lot of jazz. He did 3,000 sessions, jazz sessions, pop set. I mean, his playing is all over the very fabric of our musical heritage,
Oh, absolutely.
And man, I'll tell you, that jazz thing, it's everywhere, thank God.
Right.
And you never know, man, in 10, 20 years, in 100 years from now, the popular music of the day might be whatever jazz is then,
Well, when I was at when I got out of the manufacturer's rep business, which I was in pro audio for 30 years, I took 2 years and I worked at Eastman Guitars, and several of our listeners and readers and all that know that. And I was trying to sell jazz guitars. And that's when I did the research. It said jazz as an idiom is about 1.5 points of the total music market. I figured guitar was about maybe a tenth of that at best. So trying to give away jazz guitars was tough. It was a tough market to be in. And so then I started thinking to myself, why is this, And then I found out that jazz was a 4-letter word and nobody wanted to use it or claim it. And and I'm not going to mention names because it would break some trust, but there are some very famous guitar players who don't want their music to be classified as jazz because they know it won't sell.
Right.
That was their feeling about it. So the point one of the things that we try to do here is the best letter I ever got from anybody. The very best letter I ever got from anybody is a guy said to me, he said, "You make me proud to say I'm a jazz guitar player again."
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. The jazz thing, it's interesting because here's what I find with students. I mean, look at first of all, jazz players who went smooth jazz because it was commercial, right? Great players, had to do something else to make a living because, they couldn't make a living playing jazz. But students, when you sign up for TrueFire, you create your musician profile, right? And you put down in the list the styles that you like. And what I found is that students like to list jazz, even though they really don't play jazz. Right. Because it's kind of cool. If you're a student, you really want to learn jazz. You want to be a jazz player because it's cool. And this has been consistent since day one. If you're a professional, okay, I've had same thing. I've had guys come in and we do a course and it's like, okay, what shall we call this genre? Well, anything but jazz, right? Because it does not sell. So it's a complete opposite, right? I wanted to tell you, I wanted to rewind back to something that you said. So I remember saying in this interview, my misconception about how difficult it is learning jazz. And it's not difficult learning jazz. It's difficult mastering jazz, but that's the case with any genre of music, right?
Absolutely.
Frank Vignola and I, he's like one of my best friends, and he's the guy I could call up, and we do all this newfangled technology and stuff like that, and a lot of people are, uncomfortable with it. He will try anything, which is why I love him. So he and I talked about how can we get people to start playing jazz? How can we make it as easy as possible? Right. So he came up with, well, I gave him the title and then he came up with a curriculum. 1, 2, 3 jazz guitar. Okay. So 1, 2, 3 jazz guitar sounds like
Right.
easy, right? So he came up with, you're going to learn 3 chords. I want you to start thinking. There's going to be a quiz. Which 3 chords? 3 rhythms, right? And 3 ways to jazz up your lines. Okay. What are the 3 chords forms we taught?
Are you asking me the question?
Yep, it's pop quiz.
Oh, 2-5-1.
We taught them the major 7th,
Oh, major. Sorry.
the minor 7th,
And the
and the
dominant.
dominant 9th, right?
Right.
So, and the minor 7th, you know, this one, right? Like, so major 7th for most blues, and yes, play the 6-string root, major 7th.
What are you talking about?
Not that one,
Oh,
6-string root. Yes, and then 5th string root.
So you want the A?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah,
And then the minor 7th.
this is a test here.
You got it. You
How many of those? How many of those you want? You know.
And then,
I did go to school.
yeah, but so if you think about rock players and blues players,
Right.
those players, and then later country players, you know, you didn't learn a major 7th. You didn't have that in your vocabulary, right? But you got to have it in your jazz vocabulary.
Right.
Minor 7th, you played in a different way. And the dominant 9th, the rock players maybe didn't know that, but the blues players, of course, did, right? So right away, it's like, wait, 3 chords, okay, that's cool. And then 3 rhythms. We did a Charleston, we did a shuffle, and a swing. And then he came up with, I think that's correct, I may be wrong, but we showed him 3 rhythms. And then 3 ways to jazz up your lines, you know, sliding in, adding some chromatics, and I forget the 3rd thing. That course, to this day, is one of our best sellers. And it works. It absolutely works, right? So as with anything, and this becomes increasingly challenging, today, many students need immediate gratification, right?
Right.
Because they're not professionals. They do this because they love music. They love to play guitar. They come home, maybe put on a jam track. They don't, you know, they're serious about the guitar, but they're not necessarily serious music learners, right?
Right.
And the way you inspire this type of player, passionate hobbyist, is get them to spend 5 or 10 minutes with you and teach them something new that they can use right away. And if you look at all of the 50,000 lessons, they're all like, we're going to tell you what we're going to tell you. Then we're going to tell you. Then we're going to tell you what we told you. And it's all designed around that kind of philosophy. You know, you've hit on lesson, you're going to walk away with something new.
You've hit on so many things. Dr. Bose. Amar Bose, the Bose Corporation. I used to work, they were a client of mine. And his sales process was tell them what they're going to hear, let them hear it, and tell them what they heard.
That's exactly it. That's our educational mantra. Amar Bose.
I learned that from him, got 30 years ago, you know.
So the vast majority of our lessons, when you go back, you'll see we'll usually have an overview or an intro lesson where we tell them what we're going to tell them. Right. Then there's a performance where we put what we told them in a musical context.
Exactly.
And then the 3rd video is the breakdown where we showed them and told them what we told them, you know? And so, you know, the other thing that's true, I remember you and I first met together when you were selling Eastman guitars.
Yeah.
Which was a really good guitar, man. Those guitars were so good.
And I spent, I won't go into, yes, but it
was a great guitar, right?
My job was to improve them. And I think I need to edit this out, but I think we've done I did a damn good job of doing that for them. I did my job, spent my 2 years.
Yes, you did.
Off to something
And
else.
remember, we did a couple little things together.
We did.
And the key is, you know, I remember you and I talking about it, man. Like, let's teach people a little jazz, you know, teach them a couple new things,
Hang on there.
inspire them. Because when we learn something new on guitar, we go and buy another guitar or another piece of gear, right?
Well, absolutely right. And one of the things that, you know, most guys are, you know, they're pentatonic players, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even that little lick right there is a flat 5. Where'd that come
Yeah.
from? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, where'd that come from? And so the big thing I tell guys that do contribute lessons to us, because we've got several of your guys that contribute mini lessons to us, like 2-minute lessons, and then we give them the link to TrueFire. We say, you know, now if you really want to learn something from X music, you know, this is where his full course is. You're welcome. You're welcome, by the way.
Thank you, man.
But we, you know, and Frank, just let me get back to Frank for just 1 second. Frank is my favorite guy. I mean, Frank Vignola, Saint Frank. He's the best guy out there. He's the best guitar player out there. And I mean that sincerely. You know, somebody was telling me today, they said, have you heard this track with Frank and Henry Acker, the one that was done in October? He said, I think Henry smokes him. This is what a friend of mine tells me this. I said, Frank.
No way. You can't smoke, Frank.
Frank at will can smoke anybody on the planet. And I said, anybody on the planet.
Yeah.
At will. Frank is the most generous, magnanimous, accommodating. He made me sound good. He and I jammed on a video. I mean, Frank is so wonderful with people. He's an amazing musician. He's got an ear that I mean, I love Frank. And you said you love Frank. We have a fan club. I mean, you know, he's been so good to us. And that guitar, this other one that I picked up, this is a Frank Vignola model made by Ryan Thorell, back when Frank and Ryan.
I love that. Hey, Ashley, could you go get my Monterado guitar out of the case? Yeah, I've got to show you great guitar, but let me tell you this about Frank. Okay?
I love Frank. Yeah.
Well, and before I tell you this, you could, I'm going to make this offer right now. If you want to, how often do you publish an issue?
Every day. Literally, we put out new material. We put out a new cover every month.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's all online. Mm-hmm. And new material. Oh, by the way, my partner Joe Perry says hello.
Oh, I love Joe, man.
Yeah. Well, Joe's my partner in this.
I love Joe. Joe and I worked together when he was at Guitar Player magazine.
Right. Well, he's you know, Jazz Guitar Today, and oh my God, look at that.
So Sean McGowan came in.
I know. I love Sean.
He came from Colorado with this guitar. It's so light. It's small, right? It's got, I don't know what you call these things in the F holes, but you can remove them. See? So that there's no
they're these. I've got one in my hand.
Okay. And I looked at it, I said, what the heck is that? I played it. I said, man, you know, I've just got to get one. And it's made by, and I don't play it. I don't even deserve to play this thing. So, but I let the artists, if they want to play it.
I love it.
It's made by Monterado Guitars in Colorado.
Yeah.
And I remember calling him up, and saying, just saw this guitar, gotta have one. Whoops. And,
I love it.
You've got, look, he even put my logo. I said, I'm going to stroke you a check. I'm going to send it to you now. Right. Take your time, because it was a prototype.
Right.
And look at this little touch here. Can you see that?
Yeah. Yes.
That inlay there.
Is that an actual hole or is it an inlay?
Nope, it's an inlay. I mean,
beautiful.
Just beautiful. And it took, He sent me pictures all along the way. Took about 3 years. I waited three
Yeah.
years, the pandemic and all that. Let me lay this down before I
And
kill
you
it.
ought to come. You ought to come out to the Arvada Archtop Festival in September. Frank will be out there. I mean, even if you don't come as TrueFire, just come out there and just.
Oh, listen, if I came there, God knows, I
Bring your
spend too
checkbook.
much money. You should see our collection here. But this one I want to tell you, we're back to Frank. So
Yeah.
we would go to the Suave guitar festivals in Italy, put on, be an annual thing. And Tommy would be there all the time. And Frank was invited. And Tommy is also a very generous person, always invites people on stage.
Absolutely. I don't know Tommy, but I know Frank.
And I saw the most amazing. So Frank and Tommy are sitting there, and this is all just spur of the moment, and they start playing some gypsy jazz, right? And Tommy is doing his thing. Tommy's an amazing player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Frank is staying in gear too, right? And then Tommy picks it up. And it becomes like this friendly little cutting heads thing.
I've seen them do that before.
Oh my God. It was like, okay, the more Tommy pushed the pedal to the metal, Frank you can't not smoke Frank. Period. It's just, but he is so generous. So we did the jazz camp here. I've got to send you this video, man. We had Frank, Cheryl Bailey, and Tim Lurch were our instructors. And then every night we would have a jam session, and they would do they do a couple, 3 tunes. Right. And then the students would get up,
Right.
And Frank, so encouraging. And the music, same deal there, because all 3 of those players can play their ass off.
Oh, listen, Cheryl Tim, they're all great, but Cheryl is a freaking monster. I mean, she is a monster.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Frank, after the second night, said, man, he said, it's some of the best music I played ever, because they're all very generous in that way. Mm-hmm. And there's no competition, not even a friendly competition. Right. It was all about serving the music, man. Right. It was just an incredible thing to watch, right?
I've never heard Frank play anything that didn't sound or feel like music. I mean, he will play a lick from time to time, but it's always serving the tune.
Well, does anyone play a ballad or it's all about the melody, Nobody. He's just phenomenal. And what I wanted to say also, man, is you are very kind to call us up when you're doing a thing, and we give you whatever you want. But you can have anything you want, anytime you want. You could create a little lessons page, digital page, whatever, and just pick what you want to have up for that period of time, and we'll do it, because it's exactly what I said about, when I was a kid reading Guitar Player magazine. At the end of the day, printed music or printed lessons, but, anybody that's reading about jazz, reading your articles, they've got a guitar, they likely want to play. Right. There's just a wealth of information here, and I'm happy to share it, as much and as often as you want.
I will share. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I'll share that with Joe, because that's Joe's ballywick. But I'll say, I want to get, and that's very kind of you. Thank you. And we'll make something happen with that. Sure. But what I was going to tell you is something you mentioned earlier. We're talking about time frames. Mm-hmm. When I started this and came up with this idea, and I pitched it to Joe, I explained what I wanted to do. I had 2 time frames that I wanted our articles to fall into, and that's standing in line at Starbucks and waiting for your food at a restaurant, because 80 or 90% of everything that happens here. They either
Mhm.
read it or they're watching it, listening to it. And of course the the major articles are a little bit longer than that. But here's the poignant thing that kind of going back to what you're talking about. When I talk to the guys, I say, give me a 5-minute lesson where you give a player something that they can learn in 5 minutes that they can use.
Mhm.
I mean, even if look, here's a Lydian scale, I mean, you know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
or Lydian, or even not even that. I mean, just anything that they can, one concept is all I want is one concept. That's it. One concept. Don't try to, don't show them harmonized scales and all that. Just give them one little thing that they can use, that they can go, oh, I can learn, I can learn that and put that against, that. Yeah, I can do that.
Mhm.
Instead of, I mean, listen, I still play a lot of blues, a lot of blues licks and all that kind of stuff. But give me one thing that
That's
I
right.
can use, one little thing.
Well, that's the key, man. Let me show you this. So Tim Lurch was in, I think last week or the week before.
Yeah, we interviewed him a couple of days ago.
He's got this book out,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And at dinner, we came up with this concept. He didn't show me the book there, but look, lots of, it's like a chord dictionary.
Right. Yeah.
I said, look, you'll probably sell a ton of them, but no one's really going to use it.
Chord chemistry.
That's right. And you got to have that.
Yeah.
Okay. But you're not going to do it. So I said, Tim, what if we created a series of episodes, 3-minute episodes?
Yeah.
In that 3-minute, you teach, we concentrate on chords. You show them one chord,
right.
Tell them how to apply it. It could be the second inversion of a minor ninth is a great chord to, play a little bit, boom, 3 minutes at like an egg timer, done, right? Um, that's how people learn today.
Tim did a thing for us. Again, we're like a feeder. We're trying to be a feeder for his bigger thing, thing with you. And this is how I do it kind of thing on one song, Misty. And I had him play the tune, and then I had to explain what he did, very simple terms. And yeah, it's all part of the same thing. I got one, we've been here a while. I got one more question, or kind of a question I'd like you to address a little bit.
I take you on these tangents.
No, you're not taking me anywhere. We're both in the same boat. We love this. You and we're very similar now. Listen, you jump in this freaking canoe and you get down the river and you go, here, let's go over. I mean, I don't. That's me, man. That's just it. But so you got all these incredible artists / teachers, in all kinds. I mean, how do you go about selecting somebody to be a TrueFire artist?
Yeah, that's in the beginning. It was really tough because it was so new. Remember, we've been doing this a long time. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of like, we'd go knocking on doors, tell them what we were thinking of doing. And we pretty much would, anybody that said yes, we do it. Okay. But as the years went by, it became, we hardly knock on doors anymore. And the best referrals come from artists that have been here before, right? Because they know us, they know how we roll, and they know, if Frank tells me, whoever,
Henry Acker,
I'm or Julian Lage, or I am. It's you had me at hello kind of a thing. You know?
Sure.
So there's one guy that I really, really think we need to have. His first name is Pat. The other guy is Al, right? And we're going back and forth with Al, and that connection came very much in the same way. An artist knew the Al's guitar tech, the guitar tech, and they were, man, Al should do this thing, and but sometimes it could take years. Here, I'll tell you that. Do you know Henry Johnson?
Al is on our cover right now as we speak.
Man, he's one of my heroes. I mean,
you listen to the interview. I mean, I
absolutely will. So
yeah,
Henry Johnson, you know Henry Johnson out of Chicago?
I want to interview Henry. I never have, but I want to interview Henry. Yes.
So I was introduced to Henry literally like 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he's a monster player. He's a guy that's young enough to have played with the greats and the organ trios. Old enough to have played with them, young enough to be playing today, paying it forward, right?
Right.
And he and I started talking, 15 years ago, easily, maybe more. And it was like, yeah, man, would love to do this, would love to do this. I'm just, I don't know, this goes on. I call him, every 3 months, and it would be the same thing. And it's like, man, it turned out that Henry, this is big. Henry really confessed that it wasn't about his schedule or anything. It wasn't about the deal. It wasn't about the money, because we pay very well. Mm-hmm. It was about, he didn't think that he was a teacher. He said, Brad, I don't know I don't know the names of the chords I play. I don't know the scales or this. I'm not, I said, Henry, geez, I wish you would have said this earlier. I just want you to come in and talk about what you hear, what you see, what your fretboard says to you. And, so he said, okay, man, but I don't know if people are going to, anyway, he comes in, we did his first course called, I think, Jazz Expressions or something like that.
Yeah.
But, and he talks about areas of activity on the fretboard. Right. He talks about colors, he talks about, I don't know scales, but I think of phrases, right? And so he did this course, went number one with a bullet. I mean, just crazy.
Yeah, because that's the way guitar players think.
That's right. And so he calls me up 2 months later. He said, Brad, I think we have a problem. This is after his first course. I said, what? He says, well, a friend of mine called me up and said, you know how you put those free lessons up on YouTube? And I think there's really something wrong. It could be, I don't know, some spammy thing. I said, well, what's wrong? He says, it's like up to 230,000 views. This is 2 months in.
Yeah.
Someone's, scamming it or whatever. I said, well, let's go there and look at it. Which lesson is it? Sure enough, it's at about 250,000 views. The title of the lesson was Phrases, Not Scales. Okay. Right. And that's what people want. Okay. And the best, I mean, look, I love having John Stoll come in and get all kind of like rocket science, because a lot of people are into that. But at the end of the day, most of us just want to hear from you. How do you hear the music? How do you think of it? It's not about scales.
What are you thinking?
Right.
What are you thinking? That's the question I ask when I see a guy, even when I was talking to, anybody, if they played this, well, what the hell is that?
Right.
What are you thinking here? Why that?
Yeah.
When you play a note of this line right here, what are you thinking? How can I relate to that? Well, I'm thinking I'm going to play out over A minor. That's an A. It's a B. It's a C. Those are the first three notes in the minor scale. Yeah. And I'm going to drop down to here, which is the E, which is the 5, and the G, which is going to be the flat 7. And here's a B note. They might not even know what that note is, but I'm going to play. There's a B, which is the second note, or a 9. So I'm thinking that should sound pretty cool. If someone's playing this, I go, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Man, we have
the kind of stuff that people go, yeah, I can play that.
That's right. We have in our library, in the blues category, probably, I don't know, 150 lessons on the pentatonic scale.
Yeah.
Pentatonic scale for blues. 150 different ways of explaining
What's going
how
on?
they see or hear or utilize it. The pet 5-note scale for blues.
Yeah.
That's and people will, find the explanation that they and the artist that they can connect to. Some people are going to connect to Stoll because he will tell you about the mode of the mode of the
Right.
mode. Okay, and somebody else is going to connect to, you know, uh, Henry Johnson talking about areas of activity and
This,
colors, and
this
you
isn't the
know,
greatest thing for our interview, and I'll probably edit this out, but let me give you a
uh,
personal experience with that, okay?
sure,
I had to put a belt on my dryer, right?
yeah,
So I went to YouTube, and there's like 10 guys
oh yeah, oh yeah,
teaching me how to put a belt on my dryer.
yeah,
And one guy goes, well, last Friday afternoon, I went down. I was bass fishing for about an hour and a half. And Sadie came down and she brought me a sandwich and we did there. And then later on in the day, I figured I better get to that dryer.
yeah.
Before I did, Billy from down the street, then there's that guy. Then another guy comes on and says, in 2002, I was the head of engineering for General Dynamics. And when we
That's
were
right.
thinking out I can't relate to these guys. And then the guy comes on and says, look, you open up the thing, turn to this,
That's right.
pull to this, pull to that. And some guy is going to relate to the bass fisherman guy. And some guy is going to relate to the General Dynamics astro
Absolutely.
engineer. And some guy is going to relate to somebody that's just going to explain this is what you do. And I'm not
That's
putting any of
right.
those guys down, but you got to go online and find the guy who explains the pentatonic scale in the way that you want to receive it.
That's right. And the proof of that pudding is those three guys that you just talked about with the belt probably, have all 5-star ratings, have, a gazillion views because of
Absolutely.
exactly what you said. It's
Exactly.
that's what teaching is. That's what is so great about online teaching. If you go and I've got nothing against formal education of any kind, but if you go to Berkeley, you're going to learn formally, and there's going to be a set, curricular path that you're going to follow.
Right.
But most people love to cherry pick. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's our customer. They just love,
Yep.
to cherry pick a little from here, a little from there, learn one new thing. If they learn one new thing a week,
Right.
uh, happy. If I learn one new thing a
Yeah.
week, I'm happy.
You're singing my song. I'm an actor and I go to school for acting as well. I went to university for it, but I also take classes every week still. And when I was in school, I learned all of the big theory, all the stuff, all of this, and I learned a little bit about this method and that method and this other thing and this other thing. But that's great. That gave me the language, the overall overview. But to
Yes.
really dial in and get something I can use, I have to take a very specific, I have to get very specific about what am I going to do in that scenario. And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question on how do you become a true fire? What do you look for? Obviously, people that can communicate,
Hmm.
have a message. And then you mentioned referrals.
Yeah. I mean, yes. To become a true fire educator, I would say go look at all our jazz educators,
Mm-hmm.
probably know half of them, and go find out what this is all about and what you've got to do and learn more about the people and how we roll here. And the educators will know better
Absolutely.
who's really qualified. And if I get a call from Cheryl or from Sean or from Frank, it's kind of like in like Flynn.
Yep. Well, the last thing that I will mention to that is because I have to do a lot of filming these days, and I do a lot of taping for auditioning, and so I'm in front of a camera quite a bit, and this, of course, but in front of, and it's you guys have come up with a beautiful presentation formula. You
Thank you.
your lighting together, you got all your tech, you got together. Your editing is spot on. I mean, if people that watch these videos most of them can't appreciate what goes into making that actually happen, because it's seamless. It just, when you go to a movie, you don't think about, oh, he had a light over there, he did the camera this, he did, you don't think about it, you just watch the show. And it's the same thing. And when you see poorly done stuff, you know, that stuff becomes quite evident. And you guys have got, you know, you're the kings of it. You know, you've mastered the formula presentation.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for saying that. And, you know, the team here, they're really passionate about doing what we get to do every day.
Yeah.
You know, 23 years I've been doing this. I still pinch myself on the way to the studio. It's, you know,
you get to hang out with some really cool people, you know.
No, dude, today we have Mike Dawes. I don't know if you know Mike, but incredible young modern fingerstyle player from England.
Mm-hmm.
And then Thursday and Friday, Yngwie Malmsteen is coming.
No.
In. Okay. Like two complete different, you know, and you know, and
the maestro himself.
I just you know, love it. I mean, how could you not love this, you know?
Speaking of just, I mean, Yngwie with a symphonic orchestra is just something, and more so than the rock band to me. You know, I mean, when he does his thing with, you know, and does his, you know, Paganini stuff and all of that, it's like,
no, he's amazing. And you know what? I never really knew him before. I'd never met him before. But you know, getting to this stage once we made contact, he's funny, likable. I'm looking forward to, you know, this of course is going to be the best course ever, right? Yeah. And you know, and he's got a fanatical fan base, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I'll tell you this is funny. Well, not funny, but you know, we when we shoot on brand, we've got the white background, you know, the three. He doesn't shoot on white. So he is going to be the first artist ever of the 300 artists that we've worked with. Right. First artist ever to shoot on a green screen, okay? Because he wants to teach, he wants us to put a castle, you know, behind him, okay? Now, I don't know if it's going to wind up being a castle. I don't know what it is, but, you know, it was important to him to not do the white, to do the, and so you're going to see something very interesting when this course comes out, and very different. And, you know, the way we roll with artists is they have final approval over everything. Yeah. They want to shoot against the green screen in front of a castle, we'll do it. You know?
Well, you know what? That doesn't surprise me. If you think about his career and the way he went about it and all of that. I mean, he just pushed all kinds of envelopes and edges and new ideas and thoughts. And
he's one of the pioneers of that whole genre.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. Incredible. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And he is an amazing talent with an amazing ear and amazing ability. And, you know, I mean, he's got the rock star image thing that he, you know, either like that or hate that or whatever, but there's no denying his talent. There's no denying it. Well, listen, man, go ahead.
Talk to Joe Perry. Talk before you sign off. Tell him to give me a shout.
I will. I'll call him as soon as I get off the
phone. You could have, you know, I'll give you anything and everything that you want to stand up. We did this with Guitar Player Magazine for many years. You know, there was a section there. You can rotate them in and out. You can, you know, you can have whatever you want for your readers. Because I love what you guys are doing. I love what you guys are doing. You know, and not easy what you're doing. So I have to.
I gotta pay for that Ferrari somehow. You know.
You know, you do. I gotta pay. What's funny is Yngwie lives in Miami.
Oh,
and is bringing a red Ferrari.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a Ferrari freak.
Mine's this big.
Oh man, what a joy. I remember you and I talking with Eastman. Get on topic and then we just spend an hour on the phone.
No. There's the topic. You know, that's just a suggestion. That's all that is.
Well, we
Listen,
covered some good
yeah, no,
ground.
this has been great, and people are going to love it. And you know, they need to know there's a human being behind all of this and why it is the way it is. And you know, if anything, you've been so generous with and transparent with your true personality, and that's important.
Thank
That's
you.
very important. You know,
Thank you.
there's no.
Listen, man, I know this sounds trite and all that, but I'm just a blabbermouth now. But it's the team here really gets all of the credit. What they do is blows my mind.
I understand. Well, listen, this is it. This is Bob Bakert, Brad Wendkos, TrueFire, Greg Koch, by the way. Let me just back up. I am so
we
glad.
Can't stop.
I'm so glad to see that he is out there playing as an artist.
Yes.
You know, because man, that guy has been demoing for this person and that person and all, and people, they knew he was great and everything like that, but he has his own voice. And,
he really does. But, you know, he got locked into that. You know, he's got a big family, right? And he figured out a long time ago that you can't really make a lot of money as an artist, and selling records and gig money is short money. And it was education. He did all that stuff for Hal Leonard. You know, he's got forget the name of the company in Colorado, but he's leveraged education way back. And you know, artists, man, during the pandemic, if I had a nickel every time an artist called me to say, "Hey, man, thank you," if it weren't for my, you know, rev shares from TrueFire, that was my only income.
Wow.
You know, education for artists is where the new mailbox money is.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone should do it. You don't need to know the name of the chords or the name of the scales.
Right.
And there's so many options today, not just TrueFire. You got Patreon, you got YouTube, you can build your own with Kajabi. Just do it, man, because it's like mailbox money.
That's well, I hear you. It's ready, fire, aim, my friend. Ready, fire, aim.
I know, man. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bob Bakert with Jazz Guitar Today with Brad Wendkos from TrueFire. Check it out. Check it out. Check it out. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.